It was a statement series for the Royals north of the border, and can they take that momentum into Boston? We'll give you our breakdown next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into a Monday edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can catch us on wherever you listen to your podcast. And you can find me on Twitter. My username is at JohnnyJ_15. That is at JOHNYJ_15. And if you are looking on how to check into more of our channel, you can always find my episodes Monday through Friday. They'll be 30 minutes in length, as well as 60-second YouTube shorts after the game, though might not always be able to get them up on the weekend. But we also have the Locked On Royals postcast, which is hosted by Chance Lebo, and he broadcasts live for about 15 to 20 minutes after all of the Royals games as well. And you'll just come right to our YouTube channel, or after the game, you can check it out on Spotify or all those podcast apps. And you can listen to what Chance has to say on the Royals win or loss. Before we get started, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. Go to 5hourenergy.com today and use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off on your order. That's only valid through September 30th, so order transfusion-flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. Big series win in Toronto for the Royals, as they took 2 out of 3, won the rubber match yesterday in extra innings, and they're back to 500. Now, they got to 500 on Friday, then lost on Saturday with Noah Cameron on the mound, and then found a way to scratch and claw to victory on Sunday, tagging Sir Anthony Dominguez for 5 runs in the 10th inning. They were only able to get 1 off Rex Bassett, and they were down to their final 4 outs before they rallied and tied the game in the 8th. And the bullpen was able to keep it close, do their job, and they squeak out of Toronto, taking 2 of 3, as we just said. Now they're going to be headed off to Boston, a team they are chasing in the wild card standings, a team that currently has the number 1 wild card spot in the American League, and we'll be having a full breakdown of that in our third and final segment today. But let's circle back to the Toronto series and what it meant for this club, especially for a club that was buying at the trade deadline. They went out there and made 3 deals. You could check our episode out on that from earlier in the week. Not sure you'd want to now, though, because it's a little bit of old news. But we covered all the players that the Royals did acquire. So if you want to know more about Bailey Falter before his start tonight, or Ryan Bergert before his start on Tuesday, we covered that a little bit last Thursday. That would have been that episode. But going into Friday, you had a team that was 1 game under 500. They had walked off Atlanta, taking 2 of 3. They had won 3 consecutive series. But everybody knew that this Toronto series was going to be a statement one way or another. You went out there and added some pieces to your team. You tried to bolster the lineup a little bit. And you had 3 tough pitchers that you would be facing. Kevin Gausman's been really good this year. Max Scherzer, even though he hasn't had the inning workload due to injury, he's still Max Scherzer. He's still a first ballot Hall of Famer. And then you look at Sunday's game, and it's Rex Bassett. Not a great arm by any means, but a guy who's got 11 wins. And I'm not a big believer in pitching wins, but if you've won 11 games, your team plays pretty well when you're throwing on that day. So for Friday, you look at Michael Wacha, you look at Kevin Gausman, and I saw it as a good opportunity. Michael Wacha has been much better at home than on the road this year, and Kevin Gausman always seems to give the Royals fits. And through the first inning of Friday's game, Vladdy Jr. hits one 500 feet, it feels like, at 120 miles an hour, and the crowd's going crazy. I mean, it was a packed crowd for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so you knew it was going to be a tough environment. But after that, home run from Vladdy Jr. in the first inning, the Royals took the lead and never looked back. Yaz got his first home run and his first AB with the Royals. Bobby Witt Jr. had a 3-run blast. They continued to add on late. Adam Frazier homered, Salvador Perez homered. And that, to me, was quite the resounding win for a team that really hadn't had one against a team that caliber in a long time. And so we could bring up, sweeping the Rangers, a team that is ahead of them in the postseason picture. we can look at the Cleveland series and say Jonathan India's walk-off was a statement win. But that game was at home, and the Rangers series was when the Rangers were not playing good baseball. Toronto isn't playing phenomenal baseball. They also came in tied with the best record in the American League. So you have a team that has been just as good as Detroit this year, has loads of talent offensively, and you're in their own ballpark. And I don't know if I've said it before on this podcast, but I'll absolutely reiterate it. I believe Toronto, when they've got the crowd there, is one of the toughest places to play in all of baseball. You go back to 2015 and the Royals going in to Toronto and taking that series. I know they only won one game when they went for Game 3, Game 4, and Game 5. But you listen to the crowd, how loud it gets there, how into it on every single pitch they are. For the Royals to respond that way on Friday, that showed me a different team. Now, on Saturday, not great baseball. Noah Cameron wasn't as sharp, but the offense just couldn't do much off of Max Scherzer. They made it interesting, which I will say with the new and improved lineup, I like the fact that in a game where it's 3-0 going into the 6th inning, there's still an opportunity to make this thing close. And that they did. They scored 2 runs. It was 3-2, but then Steven Cruz was just wild and inefficient in his outing. He's now wound up on the 15-day IL with a shoulder impingement, I believe. So that's something we're going to have to monitor. And Daniel Lynch did take his spot coming off of the IL. He threw well yesterday. But Saturday's performance wasn't a terrible one. It wasn't as good as Friday or Sunday, but I would just say more so lackluster. Nothing really popped to me. Noah Cameron was fine, not as good as he's usually been, and the offense was pretty sluggish against a 41-year-old pitcher or 40-year-old pitcher. And that's not to disrespect Max Scherzer, but we all know he's not what he once was, even 3 to 4 years ago. Still, first ballot Hall of Famers, guys that are as good as him, they're still going to have that pitchability aspect. So to lose that game on Saturday, I looked to Sunday and said, well, you like the matchup Seth Lugo and Rex Bassett, but man, you'd be feeling so good if you didn't really have a lot of pressure on Game 3. You found a way to take 2 of 3. You beat Gausman, you beat Scherzer. Now you're going for a sweep, and you're over 500, but there's no pressure if you do lose. If that's the game you lose, you still took 2 out of 3. You did your job in Toronto. And for 7 innings of that game, it looked like a lot of previous Royals games where it's close. It's a 1-run game. Offense isn't doing much. Pitching's doing their job, but there's going to be 1 inning where it just gets busted open. And honestly, that's what we saw a little bit on Saturday, was a team that kept it close, 3-0, 3-1, 3-2. And then even though the Blue Jays had 1 run in that 8th inning, I believe it was, off of Cruz, or it was Noah Cameron's run, but Steven Cruz allowed him to go and score. That was the moment where I went, okay, they kept it close enough, but they clearly couldn't put themselves in a great opportunity to win that game with their final 6 outs. On Sunday, it was a different story because it's a 2-1 game. They're getting mowed down. Louis Varland comes in, just traded over from Minnesota, pumping 100 miles an hour, pretty devastating off-speed stuff. And the Royals get the first out and the second out, and not much to it. Right, Kyle Isbell grounds out, Jonathan India grounds out, and you're thinking, well, let's see if we can get at least 1 run off of Jeff Hoffman in the 9th. But Bobby Witt Jr., who had failed to come through twice earlier in the game, he rips a 113-mile-an-hour double, puts himself in scoring position, and then on the first pitch, Vinny just guides one into right center, and you start to feel like, man, if they can find a way to win this one in the 9th or in extra innings, that can go a long way into how this team plays for the month of August. And again, I tip my cap to the bullpen. You can't put yourself in that spot unless John Schreiber does his job, unless Daniel Lynch does his job. Lucas Ursig and Hunter Harvey go out there and do their job. Because when it set it up in the 10th inning, and I love the fact that Kyle Isbell didn't bunt, because the top of the order was coming up for Toronto, and 1 run was not going to win you the game. Carlos Estevez had not thrown since Wednesday. You knew he was likely not going to be as sharp, which is why putting him in the game with a 5-run lead, it can be seen as a good move. I wasn't a huge fan of it just because those outings can go haywire for closers when it's a 5-run game. But to have that 5 spot, Kyle Isbell has the double. Tyler Tolbert scores 2 with a single, and that was a huge at-bat for him because he pinch ran for Vinny earlier in the game, and that move was criticized by a lot of people. How can you pull Vinny from that spot with 2 outs, and then Maikel Garcia swings at the second pitch of an at-bat, and now you've wasted that? Well, Tyler Tolbert can handle the bat a little bit. He's now come through a handful of times in spots like that, and he's hitting 240 on the season. He's not going anywhere. He's pretty much this team's Dairon Blanco for the rest of the way. At least that's my thought as of now, not trying to be a prisoner of the moment. But to put up a 5 spot, take advantage of mistakes by Toronto, that's something that good teams and red hot teams can do. And the Royals, for the most part, have been hot. I'm not going to call them red hot, but you're feeling much differently going into this Boston series than you would have if you lost yesterday 2-1. Because you've got Brian Bayo throwing for Boston tonight. You've got Garrett Crochet on Tuesday, and you've got Dustin May on Wednesday. But you took care of what you needed to do in Toronto. And the goal of this road trip is still 5-4. That would mean you got to take at least one against Boston, and then you got to take the series against a depleted Minnesota Twins team. That all seems very doable because of what you did in Toronto. If you took one in Toronto, that means, yeah, you could still technically take one against Boston, but you're going to have to sweep Minnesota. And I don't recall the last time the Royals swept the Twins at Target Field. Just a house of horrors for them. We brought up that stat earlier in the season when the Royals only took, 1 of 4 from Minnesota or 1 of 3. It's just ugly there. So you don't want to bank on sweeping a team, even if they're not playing great baseball. But to win that series in Toronto against a team that's 20-plus games or was 20-plus games over 500, big-time statement series for the Royals. They're 500. They'll now turn their attention to the Boston Red Sox at Fenway Park. We're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, how should they handle the lineup once Jac Caglianone returns? I'll give you my opinion next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can catch us on wherever you listen to your podcasts. Want to tell you about 5 Hour Energy and today's title sponsor. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink minus the alcohol into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest. Some days on the course or off it, you just need an extra boost to stay sharp and energized. Golf is all about the good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the bev cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. So get your day started with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. This has been a question that popped up more than a few times for Mailbag Friday, which will be making its way back around to the people this coming Friday, of course. But Jac Caglianone is someone that's on the injured list. He is eligible to come off of it on Wednesday. So when the Royals wrap up their series in Boston, the quickest he could return would be that series finale. I would not expect it. You have the off day on Thursday, and then you fly to Minnesota. If he's ready to go and there's no setbacks and he doesn't need a rehab assignment, then I believe that Friday could be the game that you activate him against Minnesota. But this question about, well, what do you do with the lineup? Because you have Mike Yastrzemski, you've got Randall Grichuk. Those two guys are platoon bats. And you also have Adam Frazier, you've got Nick Lofton, you've got John Rave, Vinny's at first base. How are you going to juggle all of these pieces? Well, I truly believe it's still very, very simple. The Royals need to look at Randall Grichuk and Mike Yastrzemski as platoon guys. When there is a righty on the bump, so tonight, for example, Brian Bayo throwing for Boston, Mike Yastrzemski needs to be in the lineup. If you wanted Randall Grichuk to be out there, sure. You can DH him over Adam Frazier or DH him over John Rave or Nick Lofton. It makes a lot of sense because even though Randall Grichuk has fine splits against righties or not the best advantages one way or another, he's still an upgrade over John Rave, Nick Lofton, and Adam Frazier. So I can see that side to it. I still believe the best you're getting out of Grichuk and the best you're getting out of Yastrzemski is when they're platooning. So Monday night, Yaz in right field. Tuesday night against Crochet, Grichuk's in right field. Wednesday, Dustin May, Yaz is back in right field. But when Jac Caglianone comes back, now you have a little bit more interesting of a roster decision. And I'm starting to believe it is going to trend in this direction. So when Jack comes back, right, it was easier to make the moves they did and getting Randall Grichuk because Caglianone went to the injured list and that opened up a spot for Grichuk. Grichuk's there. Yastrzemski's now here. And Nick Lofton is back. There's no easy answer to send somebody back to Omaha, but now I'm starting to see a better picture as to what they can do. If Cags is back on Friday, I believe the roster casualty will be John Rave. John Rave is 0 for his last 20 or 21, dating back to his home run against Chicago. So now it feels like that hype we are buying into a little bit, the new swing coming out of the All-Star break. Water has evened out a little bit. The water has leveled. So I would say that John Rave is in a position where, he's not going to get much playing time. And I look at the value of what the Royals do off the bench. And if Jac Caglianone is here, then John Ray's even going to have less opportunities to get out there. And here's why. So if you have a right-hander on the mound, I have Yaz in right field. I've got Isbell in center. I could look into Frazier or Grichuk in left or Nick Lofton. Kind of depends on what you want to do there. But I would probably say it's more likely that Frazier is out there. And then I DH Jac Caglianone. There's no need to overthink it anymore about getting him out there. Now, he's still going to play right field from time to time. But the Royals have 2 new right fielders if Jac Caglianone's on this roster. And you're then having to DH guys that have played right field their entire career to get Jack opportunities out there. Especially coming out of the hamstring injury, I don't believe he needs to play the field the rest of the year. Just focus on hitting. And I understand the downside to that because if you are struggling like he is at the plate, you're not able to help the team in any other way. You are just there to help with your offensive abilities. But you can make a case that defensively he would not be helping much either. And the Royals need to play guys that know that position if they're in a serious playoff push. And I expect them to do that. So with Caglianone back up, I expect John Rave to be on his way out. Luke Mailey's going to be the backup catcher. Tyler Tolbert gives you the speed element off the bench, which also minimizes John Rave's ability to have that value on the bases. He's a quick guy. He's a good defender, a better defender, in my opinion, than Tyler Tolbert. But Tolbert's also a super utility guy. He can play the infield and he can play the outfield. Same thing goes for Nick Lofton. And why Lofton stays over Rave is A, he's been hitting better, but also B, he gives you the right-handed look where Frazier is that left-handed look. I said this before that, Nick Lofton has taken on the Garrett Hampson role where, if there's a lefty out there, I'd expect Nick Lofton to be in left field and not Adam Frazier. Adam Frazier's a bit of a platoon bat right now. It might not always work out that way because there could be the pitcher with reverse splits or a hitter with reverse splits. But I'd imagine that Nick Lofton is the counterpart to Adam Frazier in the lineup. And so for Caglianone, you DH him. Against righties, you DH him. Against lefties, it's Grichuk that's in right field. And maybe you do have Cags out there, or maybe you DH Nick Lofton. You got to get a little bit more, I would say a little bit more strict with how you play Jac Caglianone the rest of the way. Whereas early on in his career, which was literally 2 months ago, it was righty lefties, does not matter. He needs to learn how to hit. And I do agree with that to an extent. Because do I want Nick Lofton taking at bats over Jac Caglianone? It does depend on the situation. If the Royals are going into their series with, Minnesota, and they're 2.5 games or a game and a half out, and you face 2 lefties in the series, and it's Nick Lofton or Jac Caglianone, well, maybe the best solution is throwing Nick Lofton out there because Jack is still hitting sub 160 on the season. He was hitting a little bit better before he went on the injured list, but he still is a little bit overmatched at the big league level. And maybe not even a little bit. He's just been overmatched at the big league level. So if you're in a position where it's a big series and you need to take it, and your advantage is playing Nick Lofton over Jac Caglianone against the lefty, then maybe Jac Caglianone is that platoon bat as well for your lineup. We know how much Matt Quatraro loves to mix and match the 1 through 9. But when he comes back, I'd imagine against right-handed hitters, he will be the DH for the team. And Mike Yastrzemski is going to be in right field. Against lefties, that's where it gets a little bit more complicated and really comes down to, is it more of an upside for this lineup to have Caglianone out there against a lefty, which he still can hit. He's homered a few times off of lefties. Or is it more advantageous and there's a higher ceiling to have more righties in there and more lefties on the bench when they're facing a lefty? That's what I believe Matt Quatraro is already trying to figure out. When all the pieces are back, how are they going to construct this lineup? I'm going to lean toward him still being more of an everyday guy, but I don't believe it's going to be forced. I don't believe that every time, they've got a game, he's going to be hitting 6th or 7th in the lineup. I believe you can even drop him down a little bit further because you have Grichuk and Yastrzemski hitting in the 6 hole right now. So he is eligible to come off the injured list on Friday, or at least on Wednesday against Boston. I expect him, if there's no setbacks, to be back with the team on Friday against the Twins. Now, if he needs a rehab assignment, maybe you just push it off to next week when the Royals will be hosting the Washington Nationals. Let's take our final break of the show. When we come back, let's preview the upcoming series against the Boston Red Sox. That's next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can check us out on wherever you listen to your podcast. Want to tell you about FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. So open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. For my picks, I am going to take the under on strikeouts for Bailey Falter. Not much of a strikeout guy, and I will take the under on strikeouts for Brian Bayo. Though we can have those double-digit games, the Royals are a team that really value putting the ball in play, and I imagine it will be under tonight when Bayo faces the Royals lineup. So I'll just go with the 2 pitchers. Not going to pick a winner in this one because it might really be a toss-up when it's all said and done. Let's talk about this series between the Boston Red Sox and the Kansas City Royals. First pitch tonight at 6:10 p.m. Central Time. Kansas City at 56-56, and Boston is at 62-51, coming off of their sweep at home against the Houston Astros. So you're getting them technically at a bad time. I've been waiting for the other shoe to drop a little bit with Boston, but they have only gotten better since trading away Rafael Devers. And that is where I give some credit there. There's not many times that you'll see a team trade away a star like that, and then the players get motivated and they play even better baseball, and maybe the best baseball they've played in the last 2 years. Now, Boston was that team last year that the bullpen really got in their way, wasn't as strong, and the offense just really couldn't keep up with all the bullpen's blunders. This lineup now has Alex Bregman. They still have Jarren Duran, though he's not as good as he was last year. They've gotten great moments from Ceddanne Rafaela. Yoshida is now back. You've got Narvaez behind the plate. They've got a great pitching staff that's including the starting pitching and the bullpen. Really top to bottom, this has been a very, very good team in the American League. And the only thing I say now is if they didn't trade Rafael Devers, where would they be at? I mean, would they be ahead of Toronto in the American League East? The Yankees are free falling, and Toronto's not been good over the last week or so, and Boston's been playing phenomenal baseball. And a large credit goes to that starting pitching. And unfortunately for Royals fans, they get 2 really good arms that are throwing in this series, and the Royals have a bit of an unknown of what they're going to get from Bailey Falter, though he has made 22 starts this year, and Ryan Bergert's made 7 starts this year. It's their first start in a new uniform, and that's what I say is the unpredictable part about it, where there's a lot of pressure on him. This is not an easy team to square off against, and it's not an easy park to pitch in. So for tonight's game, you've got Falter and Brian Bayo. And the fun part about this is I'm going to be able to give you more of the background on Falter and Burgert, because some of you listening may not know what they've done over the last handful of starts. But let's start it off with Brian Bayo. Very heavy sinker, throws it hard. Royals have seen him more than a few times, but he has been very efficient over his last 7 starts. He's coming off 7 innings, a 1-run ball against the Minnesota Twins at Target Field on July 30th. He also had 5 1/3 of 3 earned runs against the Dodgers. That was back on July 25th. And then he gave up 3 earned against the Cubs at Wrigley Field over 6 innings of work. Now, as I said with the strikeout total in our FanDuel read, he's got the ability to have the double-digit strikeout game, but he still prefers to pitch to contact. 4 strikeouts against the Cubs, 5 strikeouts against the Dodgers, only 4 against the Twins as well. He did struggle with command in his last outing against Minnesota. Though he did get through 7 innings, he walked 4. But I would expect him to be in the zone tonight, and I would expect the Royals to be swinging at a lot of what he has to offer. So on the season, 7-5 with a 3.19 ERA over 110 innings, a whip that's right around league average, 1.28. A very fun arm to watch, only 26 years old. I remember last year the numbers weren't quite there for him, but he still pitched very well against the Royals when they went up against him. So that's the numbers, or those are the numbers on Bayo going into tonight's game. And as for Bailey Falter, making his first start with the Royals, we know that he is going to be very much pitching to contact and pitching in the zone. The good part about Bailey Falter pitching in the zone and attacking, despite not having good strikeout numbers, is that he's kind of got the funky angle and a bit of deception. So if he's got it working and he can limit the hard contact, he's going to be able to work deeper into this game. It's exactly what he did in his start against Detroit. That was back on July 23rd. He threw 7 innings of 1-run balls, struck out 8, and didn't walk anybody. But in his start against the Giants, that was at Oracle Park on July 29th, he gave up only 2 hits over 5 innings of work, but did walk 4 and only struck out 1. That's more of what you might see in a Bailey Falter outing. He's going to go about 5 innings, might go a few outs over that. But for the most part, he's not going to work very deep into the game, and he's not going to have the high strikeout total. That could be a recipe for disaster against this Boston team, because unless you are getting the soft contact and you are working with a low pitch count, it's going to be tough to get Alex Bregman out or Jarren Duran out or Narvaez out or Rafaela out when it's 2nd and 3rd and 1 out and you need a strikeout or you need soft contact. Like if they are tagging Bailey Falter tonight, it could be a long, long debut for him. But I like the fact that there is some deception there because he doesn't throw particularly hard. He is someone that's going to sit in the low 90s and rely on some of his off-speed stuff. He did say in his pregame interview with the Royals that his fastball is his best pitch, got a little bit more spin to it. He can locate it well. But it should be a great test for him. And I'm not going to judge Bailey Falter or Ryan Burgert, for that matter, based off what they do in one start. But tonight, he is absolutely going to have his hands full in this one with a very good Boston lineup and a lineup that played well against the Houston Astros over the weekend. Now, here's some numbers. Not much that Boston has seen from Falter. Bregman is 1 for 5. Duran's 0 for 2. Gonzalez is 0 for 2. Rob Refsnyder's 1 for 2. Trevor Story's 1 for 1. And Abraham Toro is 1 for 2. As for the Royals, Adam Frazier's OPSing over 1,900 against Bayo in his career. Kyle Isbell's hitting 286 and 7 at-bats. Vinny's hitting 333 and 6. Salvador Perez, 405 at-bats. Bobby Witt Jr., 375 and 8 at-bats. And Mike Yastrzemski is 0 for 3. First pitch tonight is at 6:10. As for Tuesday night's game, Ryan Burgert against 12-4, 2.23 ERA, Garrett Crochet. This would be the one, kind of like what we talked about in that Cubs series where when Rich Hill threw against Matthew Boyd, just the one you'll be very fortunate to win. Not so much about Burgert, but because of how Garrett Crochet has pitched and how he pitched against the Royals back at Kauffman Stadium. He has been absolutely lights out this season. One of the best trade acquisitions we saw in the offseason, and he's right there with Tarek Skubal for the Cy Young Award by season's end. He's got a 2.31 ERA over his last 15, a 2.20 ERA over his last 7, 175 strikeouts, and 141 in the third innings pitched. Again, 12 wins on the season, coming off a quality start against the Dodgers, a quality start against the Cubs, and then he had a complete game shutout with 9 strikeouts against the Rays. So, yeah, hands full against Garrett Crochet, and I don't need to go over all the numbers for the Royals because I can just tell you right now, they're not very good. The Royals have not faced Garrett Crochet, of course, since that series in Kansas City, but I believe he's only gotten better since that outing at Kauffman Stadium. As for Burgert, he is not going to work that deep into the game, at least you wouldn't expect him to. 3 innings against Washington back on June 24th, 4 2/3 against Philly on July 11th, and then in his outing against the Mets on July 29th, he went 4 innings, gave up 1 earned run, struck out 4, walked 4. He does fight his command a little bit, so that could be an issue in this game if Garrett Crochet is rolling. You are not asking Ryan Burgert to go toe-to-toe with Crochet. You are hoping the offense can give Burgert enough through the first 4 innings, and then you can turn it over to the bullpen for the rest of the game. But that'll be an uphill battle, which is why tonight's game becomes incredibly important, which would maybe then set up a rubber match game on Wednesday, which that needs to be the goal. If you can take 2 of 3, you feel pretty good, in fact, very good, heading into Minnesota to wrap up your road trip. And then on Wednesday, it'll be the newly acquired Dustin May for Boston going up against Michael Wacha. Wacha was brilliant in his outing against Toronto. I believe that could have been his best start as a Royal because of the opponent, because of the environment, and how big that game was for the Royals. And he's now got a 3.38 ERA on the season, pretty much what he was doing last year. He just continues to be the epitome of consistency in the Royals rotation. As for Dustin May, he actually got shelled in his outing against Boston back when the Dodgers were here at Fenway Park. So his next start will once again be at Fenway Park, but actually pitching for Boston. Now, in his last 7, he has struggled a 5.54 ERA, electric stuff, but just not what he once was. And this was one of the bigger moves that Boston made. I know a lot of Red Sox fans were not happy with what they did at the deadline. Still, I believe the upside can be there. He can pitch well. And hopefully at that point, the Royals are not trying to avoid a sweep against a very good Boston team. So you've got Falter throwing tonight. You've got Burgert on Tuesday. You've got Wacha on Wednesday. Royals 2-1 on the road trip with 6 to go. We'll see if they can make it 5 consecutive series wins. That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale and find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, we're going to be breaking down what happened in Game 1 and go over the American League wildcard race. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.